Welcome to my review of Season 3. Well, I don't really feel like wasting any time on an introduction, so let's just get started. This one already had a strike against it before I even started watching, because honestly, I'm just not that big a fan of these Fate of Equestria type stories. But hey, A Canterlot Wedding turned out fine, and this is the same writer. So the first thing I have to question is, why does this whole thing have to be a test that Princess Celestia has set up for Twilight? Are we supposed to believe she wouldn't take it seriously otherwise? Normally the idea with a test is that it just simulates a situation, and there isn't normally anything actually at stake. Making it a test was not only pointless, but it also seemed kind of backward. The failure song is well named because it really wasn't very good. Also, Spike should not sing. The reprise at the end was a little better, but only a little. Then we get into the Crystal Empire and things pick up considerably. The design of the Crystal Ponies was awesome. Seeing shining armour and Cadance again was awesome. And the other five all get their moment to shine, even if they did seem a bit one-dimensional at times. I also do have to question why Twilight or Rarity couldn't relieve Cadance with the shield spell. Maybe the spell was just very advanced. Well, that would explain why Rarity couldn't do it, but Twilight seems to know a ton of magic, so it seems a bit odd to say that this spell would be too advanced for her. The Ballad of the Crystal Empire was a nice tune, a very catchy beat. Shame it was so short though. Also loved that we get to see Spike and Twilight have an adventure together for once, and also see Twilight perform some dark magic for the first time. It has also always pissed me off how Spike never seems to do anything in these two-parters, so seeing him actually be the one to save the day for once was just fantastic. I didn't really think anything of Rarity exclaiming "Spikey Wikey" the first time I saw this episode. Little did I realise that this was the closest we were going to get this season to any development of Sparity. So thank you Megan McCarthy for at least giving us something. The only real major negative thing about this episode is the villain, King Sombra. He's a complete non-character. He's more like some kind of unstoppable force of nature. I've heard some people compare him to the Nothing from Neverending Story, and that to me really sums up quite well why King Sombra doesn't work. See, the reason the Nothing worked was because of how little we actually knew about it. We didn't know what it was doing, we didn't know why it was here, we didn't know what could be done to stop it, and we didn't even know if it could be stopped. There is nothing more terrifying than the unknown. But by giving King Sombra an identity and a backstory, you actually remove any kind of mystery about him. If you're going to actually establish him as a character, you need to actually do something with him. But overall, this episode was very well paced, and there were a lot of things in it that we've not seen on the show before. King Sombra's non-character issue is only a real problem during the climax, but I still don't understand why this had to be a test for Twilight. Maybe it's to give Princess Celestia an excuse not to help, but I would say that this is the weakest of the two-parters so far. I really wasn't too keen on this one the first time I saw it. I mean, there was plenty about it I enjoyed. The G3 reference, the idea of Pinkie having to comfort herself, Pinkie quietly diving into the lake, and so forth. I just kind of felt like the episode wasn't really about anything. It's just a bunch of Pinkie Pies doing Pinkie-like things, and at the end they go away. But over time I've come to realise that this is just one of those episodes that are really more about the experience of just having a good time, rather than telling a story. And as that kind of episode, it gets it spot on. The Pinkies are frickin' hilarious, them running around yelling fun the whole time. It went on for just long enough that it didn't really get tiring. The things they do while watching the paint dry was also pretty good. And again, it went on for just long enough. With that said, I do have a few questions about these other Pinkies. They are meant to be clones of Pinkie Pie, so how come they seem to be of lower level intelligence? The real Pinkie never ran around just yelling fun. Also, why wouldn't they know the name of Pinkie's friends if they are clones? With them not knowing everything Pinkie knows, shouldn't it be pretty easy to figure out who the real Pinkie is? Just ask them stuff like, what's the name of your pet, or what does a twitchy tail mean? The idea for finding out who the real Pinkie is was pretty good. But I did think that the way that Spike just happens to find a hidden compartment behind the bookshelf that he's never come across before, and it just happens to contain a book with the answer in it, seemed a little too convenient to me. Also, wasn't the fact that one of the Pinkies was acting completely differently from the rest of them a bit of a clue that that might be the real Pinkie? But nitpicking aside, this episode succeeds in what it attempts to do, giving you a fun time. It's not the kind of episode I want to see this show do regularly, but as that type of episode goes, this was one of the best. I've changed my mind about how I feel about this one so many times. To begin with, the main theme of this episode, bullying, and how you may have to become the bully to avoid being bullied yourself, is something I can absolutely relate to. I remember a number of times when I was at school when I think I did become a bully just to try not to look like the odd one out. Although I should point out that I wasn't really aware at the time that what I was doing was bullying, and it was never as bad as the things Babs does. The problem though, which is a problem a lot of people seem to have, is that Babseed's bullying is taken way too far, and she does not show any kind of remorse for what she is doing. In fact, it looks a lot at times like she's actually enjoying it. Now you could argue that this was all an act for Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. Well, firstly, no one is that good an actor. Second, if that is the case, then there would have been some indication to us, the audience, that that was what she was doing. And third, there are a number of times during the episode when we see her bullying the CMC alone. Then there is the fact that Babs gets away with her bullying. Personally, I kind of liked that. She did learn a lesson and change her attitude at the end. Also, she does apologise for what she did. I really don't see any reason to punish her further, as long as she understands that what she did was wrong. It's the same as Rarity's lying in Sweet and Elite. One thing about the ending that did piss me off was Babs's lame put-down to Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. Also, what knocked them over? Her stare? But other than Babseed's actions, there is really nothing to dislike about this episode. Pinkie wasn't so Pinkie-like in this episode, but she did get a couple of great lines. But I still don't get what veggie salad was all about. The song was also pretty good. It had a nice catchy beat, great visuals. Who knew Ponyville had a movie theatre? The lyrics left a bit to be desired though. How many times did they say yeah, yeah, yeah? But otherwise it was good. There were an abundance of great little moments in this episode. Scootaloo getting carried away on the drums, Sweetie Belle's reading of the induction, seeing Sweetie Belle's room. I could go on and on. So overall, Babseed's behaviour is a big problem, but it's also this episode's only problem as far as I'm concerned. So I'm certainly not going to brand this episode the worst episode in the entire series, like a lot of people seem to have done. What is up with that, by the way? It's like almost every other episode, someone will say it's the worst episode ever because of one or two problems it has. How about looking at the episode as a whole, guys? Anyway, a great episode, let down a little by one big problem. I just love the basic idea with this episode. Not only do they bring Trixie back, but they have made her truly evil, without her even having to break character. They really get creative with the different forms of magic we see in this episode. Though the animals doing a figure of 8 in midair seemed a bit cruel to me. There are a lot of good continuity nods in this episode, and a lot of them actually require you to have been watching the show for a while in order to fully understand them. The rock farm joke, for example. It's also interesting that Twilight mentions that only the highest level unicorns can do age spells. I wonder if by highest level unicorns she means alicorns. Trixie is using the Alicorn amulet after all. Maybe that's something we'll find out next season. There is also some interesting development of Zecora here. Apparently she knows more about magic than even Twilight. Can she even do magic? I mean, she's not a unicorn. But I guess it was more about how she knew how to outsmart Trixie. They don't make that abundantly clear, though. I love the way that they trick Trixie at the end. I kind of guessed that Twilight wasn't really doing magic, but I would never have guessed what was really going on in that scene. Also cool to see all the main characters working together to create the illusion of magic. The Pinkie being Pinkie stuff was awesome, despite her not being able to talk. Reminds me of Kenny from South Park. And on top of that, a few good Rarity being a drama queen and Fluttershy being unassertive moments. And Lyra drinking some soda. Overall, this episode is packed with great little continuity moments. I really feel like M.A. Larson felt that since this was the return of a fan favourite, he made it the kind of episode where you had to have been watching the show for a while in order to get it. But that is also a little bit of this episode's problem as well. With all the little moments it has, the plot ends up being a bit of a mess, and maybe also a bit thin in places. Especially at the end. However, I still found it to be a very satisfying experience. Well, it took them over 2 years to give it to us, but we finally got it. A Scootaloo episode. But not only that, we get all 3 members of the CMC paired up with their respective sisters/idols. Another thing I've wanted to see for a while. I'm just going to say it right here. This was easily my favourite episode of Season 3. Not only did we get some great development of Rainbow and Scootaloo's relationship, but we also get some good stuff between Rarity and Sweetie Belle, with Sweetie Belle showing that she's learned a lot from her sister, with her being able to manipulate Rarity into going with them. Some people seem to have a problem with the way Rarity is acting in this episode, with the excessive amount of stuff that she brings with her, and her constant whining.
Whining? I am not whining. I am complaining.
Oh, sorry. Complaining. I don't really see why, since she is clearly acting in character. I guess it's the way that she forces Sweetie Belle to carry everything. Well, keep in mind that this was Sweetie Belle's idea. It seems only fair that she should have to do the work. Sweetie Belle was also great for comedy in this episode. The bit where she instantly falls asleep after singing had me falling out of my chair with laughter. But I do have to ask, how come she suddenly can't sing? It's interesting to see another story cover sleep deprivation. Scootaloo riding her scooter while sleeping, then clutching a cloud in fear. Priceless. Though I still say that Applebuck season had better comedy with the way that Applejack was acting. By the way, why does Rainbow sleep on the outside of her sleeping bag on the first night? Also, love her remark that a headless horse isn't brainless. Just such an odd remark. Another thing that this episode gives us that we've been wanting to see for a while is Luna gets to play a large role. Interesting that she is able to enter other ponies' dreams. Makes me wonder if she works for Cobb. I wonder what her totem is. The scene at the end between Scootaloo and Rainbow felt very natural. These two definitely make a good pairing. And the bit where Rainbow puts her wing around her, just too cute. My only minor gripes with this episode were firstly, that I felt the Apple sisters were a little wasted, and second, the final scene could have been a little more satisfying. I mean, was that just another dream Scootaloo was having? How about showing her and Rainbow bonding back in Ponyville? Overall, this was a very satisfying episode, and gave me everything I would have wanted from a Scootaloo episode. Another idea that fans have wanted to see for a while. Rainbow Dash tries out for the Wonderbolts. I really like what they did with Rainbow this season, by having her behave less arrogant and have more value for other ponies. She really does seem to have learned her lessons from previous episodes. Looks like Merryweather is actually showing a bit of continuity between her episodes. Shame she couldn't do that for a certain other character she wrote for this season, but I'll get to that later. I think the idea with the character of Lightning Dust is that she represents the type of pony Rainbow used to be. I like the way that she isn't a bad pony. She's not a bully or a jerk in any kind of way. She's just a little less considerate of other ponies. The only thing I don't get is why the candidates are put into pairs. Is it to help them learn about teamwork? But the very first task they do in pairs also has them split into teams. A lot of people seem to have a problem with the way that Spitfire is acting. It doesn't seem very consistent with the very brief times we saw her in Sonic Rainboom and Hurricane Fluttershy. Well, that's because she's acting as a drill sergeant here. The whole idea is to toughen the ponies up and motivate them to do the best they can. Maybe some of these ponies were thinking of quitting after the first day, but as soon as Spitfire suggests that that's what they'll do, they will be far better motivated to prove her wrong. The only real problem I had with her was her voice. It just seemed a bit too soft and didn't seem to fit well with her yelling and insulting all the time. Have a listen to the drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket.
You're the lowest form of life on Earth. You're not even human fucking beings. You're nothing but unorganized, grabastic pieces of amphibian shit.
And then listen to Spitfire.
If you had what it took to be an elite flyer, you'd already be a Wonderbolt. You still think you're something special? You look like you're the worst flyer in the whole academy. You'll probably quit after the first day.
And secondly, the ending. It was basically just Spitfire dictating the message. If you're going to just spell it out for us like that, how about doing it in a letter to the princess? It's a misconception that some people have had about me in the past, that I don't like the letters. The truth is, there are times when they work really well. Baby cakes, for example. And other times when they don't. Mystery on the Friendship Express. This is one time when I think it would have worked. Then Rainbow just goes back to training. So, did she ever get into the Wonderbolts? If so, will she have to leave her home? However, it was a good lesson, and it was just great to see an episode focused on the Wonderbolts. There were two things about this episode that I loved right away. Cindy Morrow finally writing an Applejack episode, and Apple Bloom plays a large role in an Applejack episode. With that said, this episode does suffer from one big problem. The plot is far too basic. It's just Applejack making the family reunion overly complicated. There's really nothing more to it than that. I saw a lot of potential to better develop other members of the Apple family, or even better develop Babs. There was also the chance to cover the complex relationship you sometimes have with family members. See, with friends, you are friends because you just naturally get along with them. But with family, you are obligated to get along with them because they are your family. So it's a far more difficult kind of relationship. But instead it takes Applejack almost the entire episode to figure out what was obvious to the audience about 5 minutes in. That the important thing about spending time with your family is actually spending time with them, rather than finding other things to do while they are there. To be fair though, the letter at the end was great. Your family's the first group of friends you ever make. That's just so true. The song didn't do it for me, but in all fairness I think that's just because I'm not that into that kind of square dance country style music. The lyrics were certainly not very creative. How many times did Applejack say 1, 2, 3, 4? While it was nice to see Babs again, Cindy Morrow showing a bit of continuity between her episodes, I do sort of question how her and Apple Bloom can be favourite cousins now. How long do they actually spend together as friends in One Bad Apple? Overall, this whole episode felt like a missed opportunity. I mean, this is the writer of Sisterhood Social. I know she can write better family-related stories than this. But for what it was, I guess it wasn't terrible. I've always firmly believed that continuity errors are not really a strong criticism of any TV show. Especially this one, since pretty much every episode in this show will have some kind of lack of continuity. But this episode is an example of how you do have to draw the line somewhere. There is a point when a complete disregard for previous episodes becomes insulting to the audience's intelligence. So where to begin? Well, first of all, you have the fact that Applejack learned all the way back in Applebuck season the importance of accepting help when it is offered to you, and now it seems like that lesson has been forgotten about, which is a shame if you ask me, because it could have presented Applejack with an interesting dilemma. She learns in the past to accept help, but this is one time when it actually isn't right for her to accept Spike's help. This is made worse by the fact that Spike sucks at helping Applejack, which contradicts a lot of what we learned about Spike from episodes such as All's Well That Ends Well. But what's worse is that it kind of suggests that Applejack isn't reluctant to let Spike help her because she doesn't think it's morally right for Spike to be helping her, but because he sucks at helping her. It kind of makes me wonder, what if Spike had been competent at helping Applejack? So much so that it made work on the farm much easier for her. It therefore becomes tempting for Applejack to just allow Spike to help her, and ultimately become her slave. It would have been a much more interesting dilemma. Again, kind of removes any kind of interesting dilemma Applejack could have been faced with here. And what the heck is up with this whole dragon code thing? First of all, you'd think this kind of thing would have been mentioned before, considering how important Spike makes it out to be. You can't just throw important things like the rules main characters live by, without giving us some kind of proper explanation as to why they live by this rule, and why it's not been mentioned before. Also, isn't this kind of contradicting the lesson he learned in Dragon Quest? And that's made worse by the fact that one of the writers for this episode was also the writer of Dragon Quest. Okay, so I've bashed this episode enough. Let's look at some of the good things. The Timberwolves were freaking cool. They actually had some kind of an other world feel to them. More than anything else I've ever seen on this show. Like something out of World of Warcraft. I particularly like the Mega Timberwolf. It kind of reminded me of the Megazord from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I also like how the ponies don't appear to be taking the whole fake Timberwolf charade completely seriously, with Pinkie smiling, Applejack's terrible acting, and Twilight's very crude-looking puppet. Oddly enough, it seems Rainbow and Fluttershy were taking things seriously, maybe a sign that they have more respect for Spike. Also, a good bit of very subtle continuity, with Rainbow writing a story about the Wonderbolts. It's kind of a continuity nod towards Wonderbolts Academy and Read It and Weep. Overall, the main plot to this one bugs the crap out of me, but it still had plenty of good moments. Another one of a number of episodes this season that gave us something we'd wanted to see for a while. After the return of Trixie, a Scootaloo episode, and Rainbow applying to become a Wonderbolt, we now get the return of Discord. Was it worth the wait? You bet your arse it was. Discord is just as much fun in this episode as he was in the Return of Harmony. In fact, he's probably even better here because his antics are a little more restrained here. I think his rolling eyes and the red carpet tongue are my favourite bits. It's also cool that the other 5 never let their guard down on Discord. They are second-guessing him throughout the episode. Fluttershy was also a lot of fun in this, with things like scolding the beaver for his language, and the way she is fair with Discord, but also knows where to draw the line. It seems like she always puts in her best performances in her episodes, but is otherwise a bit one-dimensional. She's like the opposite of Pinkie in that sense. Though I was hoping this episode might have developed her character a bit more. Fluttershy is certainly the least well-defined of the main 6, and certainly has the most complex personality, but with the exception of the very forgettable A Bird in the Hoof, and this one, All of her episodes are focused on her lack of self-confidence to do something. I was really hoping that this episode might develop another part of her character. So while Discord was great, it's a shame he steals the limelight away from Fluttershy a bit. This episode also has a lot of fun little moments. Applejack's face hat moment, Pinkie's rant about chocolate rain, and her shiny hooves. With that said, I saw a lot more potential for Spike to add a bit of comedy to this episode, with him just making the odd remark here and there. But for the most part, he's just standing there. Also, the reforming spell sounds a lot like brainwashing and messing with free will to me, almost like the Imperious curse from Harry Potter, which is one of the unforgivable curses, which, for anyone who hasn't read the book, basically means it's illegal and will land you in jail for life. The only other negative thing about this episode is the rushed nature of the ending. Discord and Fluttershy were friends for about 5 minutes, and then he fixes everything just seconds after Fluttershy has said she's not his friend anymore. I find it hard to accept that Discord would miss a friend he's only had for about 5 minutes in the first place. I think it would have been fine if they just spent a bit longer with the two of them as friends, to give Discord the chance to appreciate it, and then a bit longer with the two of them not being friends, to give Discord the chance to miss it. Overall, I loved seeing Discord again, though it did feel a bit more like his episode than Fluttershy's. There was a lot of very believable behaviour by Fluttershy and the other 5 in this episode. I'm also interested to see what they do with the reformed Discord now. The only real major problem was the ending, but I disagree with what a lot of people have said about this episode, that it should have been a 2-parter. There really wasn't enough in this episode to stretch it out over 2 parts. Also, a 2-parter would mean one less story for the season. I don't think we'd want that. If someone had told me before Season 3 started that this season would have 2 Spike episodes, I would have been over the moon. Now that I've seen them, I kind of feel like they are slots that could have been better spent on other characters. But let's not bitch about what this episode isn't about, and just look at what it does do. The setup had me really excited. We get to see more of the pets interacting with their owners, and just causing trouble for Spike to sort out. A lot of people don't seem to like Angel acting like a dick, but honestly, that's what I really loved about him in this episode. His making Spike's life a living hell was just a lot of fun to watch. His acting like a dick was really kind of the point of his character. He's like Mr. Bean. There is a naivety and childish nature to him, which means he can get away with a lot more offensive actions, because it's coming from a naive source. You're not meant to approve of what he does, it's just amusing to watch. Also, he does help Spike out at the end, once Spike apologises, so he wasn't acting this way just to be a dick, he kind of felt like Spike deserved it. We also get some great interactions between Spike and Fluttershy, something we've not really seen since the very first episode. And some cool interactions between Spike and the CMC, something I don't think we've ever seen. It's also cool that the CMC did not just let Spike push them around. They may be naive, but they are not stupid. I think my main problem with this episode is Spike's motivation for taking care of the pets. He just wants to bake a cake. I really felt like there was a chance to better develop Spike's character by having him really try to achieve something, like improve his chances with Rarity. At least in Dragon Quest, he was trying to find out more about himself and actually accomplish something. But for the most part, it seems like the writers don't really want to give Spike any kind of ultimate goal in life. In fact, they kind of make fun of that in Spike at Your Service. Also, if it's so hard for him to get hold of jewels, where did he get the ones we see at the beginning? It also seemed pretty obvious to me that he was just going to inadvertently eat those jewels, the same way he did the others. The other thing that bugs me is that jewels appear to act as currency for this one episode, when it's been pretty well established in the past that bits are the currency of Equestria. I wouldn't mind so much except for the fact that Spike eats jewels on a regular basis. So suddenly now you're telling me he lives off a diet of money? And why does Rarity give Spike the smallest jewel? It doesn't say much for the relationship between the two of them. Aren't she and Spike supposed to be fairly close by this stage? Corey Powell, did you even watch this show before you started writing for it? Overall, this episode was worth it just because we get a lot of character interactions we've not seen very much of before, and we get a lot of good comedy with the pets. I just wish there was a bit more at stake than just Spike wanting to bake a cake. I was really excited about this one before I saw it. It sounded like we were going to get the MLP version of the Olympics, and we hadn't really had a sports-themed episode since Fall Weather Friends, one of my favourite episodes. But as it turned out, they were only really helping with the bid for the Equestria Games, not the games themselves. A little disappointing, but maybe we'll see the actual games in Season 4. It was great to see the Crystal Ponies, Cadence, and Shining Armour again. Rarity definitely gets her moment to shine with her styling Cadence's main, but for the most part she did feel a bit wasted. In fact, that really sums up this entire season for Rarity. Wasted. Pinkie was very Pinkie-like throughout. As far as random Pinkie stuff goes, it really just doesn't get much better than epic "No!" and "Yes!" to answer questions. But the pony that absolutely steals the show is Rainbow Dash. Her devotion to doing everything she can to help with the bid, including taking the blame at the end, was just wonderful to watch. As horrible as this season has been for Rarity, it's been wonderful for Rainbow Dash. The evolution in her character is just such a joy to see. Miss Peachbottom frickin' cracked me up, even if she does come across as a bit of a jerk during her first few seconds of screen time. But otherwise, she was a lot of fun to watch. Also, loved her voice. One thing I'm a little confused about though, is she meant to be claustrophobic? They seem to imply it, but it's never actually confirmed. Maybe it's a setup for a later episode. I do have a few questions about the ending though. The scene where Rainbow is taking the blame was really well done. But if I were Miss Harshwini, I would want to ask why they were using 6 ponies not from the Crystal Empire to represent it. Also, did she actually figure out that the pony she'd been talking to was also the pony that they mistook for her? And if so, did it not occur to her that the only reason that she got a nice welcome was because they thought she was the games inspector? I mean, if we're going to talk here about unbiased and unvarnished appraisal of the Crystal Empire here, how about the experience you had in the Crystal Empire while you were there? That definitely was impartial. Nobody gave a damn about you. You only get one pony the entire time you're there, even saying hello to you. You even get splashed with water and not even an apology afterwards. I mean, if we're talking about impartial treatment of someone in a potential candidate for the Equestria Games, how about just taking your actual experiences in the Crystal Empire as the actual evidence here, as opposed to just taking some other random pony's word for it? But instead of actually experiencing any of these things yourself, you're willing to just take another pony's word for it that she got a nice welcome, even though that was probably only because they thought she was the games inspector. And on the basis of this one pony, you're going to give the Crystal Empire the Equestria Games. Yeah, this whole thing is bullshit. I did like the fact that this takes place during the events of the previous episode, but I do kind of feel like they should have shown this one first, since it is the more important story. Overall, it was just great to see the Crystal Empire again, and I really want to see more of Miss Peachbottom. I just wish the ending could have been as good as the rest of the episode. This is a difficult one for me to judge. To begin with, I don't think this is the whole story. I think we will see a proper resolution to this at the start of Season 4. Also, I'm pretty sure that this was originally a 2-parter that they had to condense down to 1 episode due to the shorter season length. As a result, the story does seem a bit rushed at times, particularly in the first half. But that wasn't really what I had a problem with. What I had a problem with was, this is basically 2 stories squeezed into 1. I don't mean a 2-parter, I mean 2 standalone episodes. One about the other 5 having the wrong cutie marks, and the other about Twilight becoming an Alicorn. Both were cool, and really deserved their own episodes. Well, let's not moan about what we can't change, and instead look at what we actually get. The idea of the other 5 having the wrong cutie marks is just awesome. I particularly like the idea of Rarity thinking the weather is a form of fashion. Interesting that she is able to move clouds with her magic. I always assumed that Pegasi were the only ones that could move clouds. Though admittedly it doesn't really make much sense that she'd be doing this because she has Rainbow's cutie mark, when we are told quite clearly in the Cutie Mark Chronicles, an episode by the same writer, that Rainbow got her cutie mark by performing a sonic rainboom. But I guess they figured they couldn't have Rarity do that since she can't fly. This is also the 4th time that Star Swirl the Bearded has been mentioned in an episode. Surely it won't be long till we actually see him. I really don't get what all the fuss was about with Twilight being an Alicorn. You do realise her becoming an Alicorn does not change who she is as a character. Do you people just not like change or something? I actually think this will be pretty awesome and I can't wait to see what they do with it. Also, did Twilight make her the Pride of the Yankees reference? The songs were all enjoyable enough, but I think What My Cutie Mark Is Telling Me and A True True Friend are the only ones I want to listen to again. A lot of people didn't like how many songs there were in this episode. To that I would say, just try and think of this as a musical episode. The ending definitely had me excited for Season 4, but that is also kind of the problem for me. It felt more like a preview for Season 4 than a season finale. Though oddly enough I hear a lot of people did think that this was the series finale. Really? The other 5 and Spike are given no closure at all, and the CMC don't even appear. You really thought this was it? Overall, I did enjoy it, though mainly for the first half. I just kind of wish the first half had been the whole episode, and the second half was saved for the start of Season 4. So overall, this season gave us some good evolution of Rainbow Dash, Twilight, and the CMC, but otherwise didn't really advance any of the other characters' story arcs. And in the case of Spike and Rarity, I think they actually took steps backwards, especially in terms of the relationship between the two of them. The average for my own personal rating out of 10 for each episode this season was exactly 7, compared to an average of 7.5 in Season 1 and 7.46 in Season 2. And I think that is a fair assessment of this season. No real bad episodes, but certainly a step down from the previous 2. But maybe that's more to do with it only being 13 episodes. And it gave us a lot of stuff we've wanted to see for a while, so I can't complain too much. We get back to the usual 26 episodes next season, so hopefully they can use that extra leeway to step things up again. I'm still very much looking forward to it. See you soon.